Carlos Isu on the road to recovery, presented by Hoag Orthopedic Institute. Always happy to be joined by Dr. Alan Byer. Dr. B, let's talk about one of our favorite subjects on the road to recovery, Shohei Ohtani. We just found out today that Ohtani will make his first spring training start, ironically against his old squad, the Angels, this Friday at designated hitter.
Well, I think this might have been a little bit planned. You know, the schedule has been out ahead of time. It's not like they just found out they're playing the Angels. I think the irony of it does not go unnoticed. Well, what's going to do is make the Angels mope a little bit, probably. But yeah, that's it. DH on Friday night against the Angels in spring training. Well, let's see what happens.
I know a lot of Dodgers fans, of course, are excited to see World Series champ Shohei Ohtani back in the batter's box. The last time we saw him, he was fighting shoulder issues in the World Series after that slide into second base that we saw. He had labrum surgery to repair it. And for you, Doc, what are you expecting to see in his first at-bats coming off the procedure?
Well, labral surgery on the shoulder obviously does not take the same amount of time for rehabilitation as a Tommy John surgery on the elbow, especially for the batting motion as opposed to the pitching motion. It is his non-throwing hand, so let's keep that in mind, that had the shoulder surgery. I suspect, you know, we'll see a little bit of rust. You know, as much as you practice at spring training before the first game situation and hitting off a tee or whatever you do to get yourself game ready, there'll be some butterflies, there'll be some rust, there'll be some adrenaline, because Shohei's just that kind of guy. I think that he'll give us a credible performance. Of course, I have no statistics to back it up with because it's going to be his first appearance of the spring, but he certainly looks like he's in good shape, unlike certain other players who come to LA. I'm looking forward to him hitting as if nothing happened with that shoulder. I don't think it's going to be a factor.
You mentioned adrenaline. I think it really was adrenaline that carried Ohtani throughout the rest of the Fall Classic after getting injured in Game 2 of the World Series. But we found out earlier this month also that Ohtani described the procedure as a complicated surgery. I don't know if you saw that too, Doc, but is that more so because it adds another bump in the road in his potential return to the mound?
Well, I think it's a pretty straightforward surgery technically. We've been doing it for years. You know, you use anchors arthroscopically to reattach the labrum back to the glenoid, which is the little cup of the shoulder joint. And then you just have to shut it down, let the tissues heal, and then slowly resume normal activities after 6 to 8 weeks, and slowly build up your strength and range of motion. I think the unknown here, the great unknown here, is that during that first 6-week rehabilitative process, when he really couldn't do much, he had been throwing, you know, in terms of his elbow surgery at that point. He hadn't been throwing, you know, actually he did throw off a mound a little bit recently, but at that point, he wasn't yet throwing completely, but he had to stop throwing because you just had your shoulder operated on, you're in a sling, you're immobilized, you can't throw even though it's your other arm that's doing the throwing. So did it set back a little bit? Delay is probably a better word than setback. His rehabilitation on the elbow, of course, because he couldn't do what he was doing up until that point to rehabilitate the elbow. So you got to say it adds 6 to 8 weeks to what your guesstimate was about when he could come back from the elbow injury and start pitching again. So now he has started throwing again, obviously, because we're 5 months out from the shoulder surgery. About 5 months. So he's back on track to rehabilitating the elbow. But when is he going to be ready to throw with that elbow? Certainly not by the time the season starts, by any stretch of the imagination. I've heard maybe May is when we could see him back on the mound. I'm not sure that's a wise decision. You know, you take it one step at a time. let's see how he does with the hitting. Let's see that he remains valuable as a DH, and really gets in the groove. A lot of this is psychological too. You know, we're in a place here that we're not often in terms of a player coming back from several injuries. If he gets back into his groove, is hitting well, and he's obviously on his off days continuing to rehabilitate his elbow, you know, by the summertime might be reasonable. But, you know, we could talk a little bit about whether that's even wise. You know, this is such a stacked Dodger lineup. They don't really need him to rush back to their pitching rotation. They're pretty wealthy right now in terms of pitchers. So why rush it?
So that gets into a point where I want to bring up an interview with ESPN senior baseball writer Jeff Passan, who was on Clinton and Friends, airing here on ESPN LA 7 to 9 a.m. every morning. And Passan goes into, similar to what you were talking about, a timeline for Ohtani's return to pitching. And he kind of portrays it with a very safe mindset.
I genuinely wonder how you manage his desire to get back out there, the idea of it helping you winning because his stuff is so good, and the concern about what could happen long term if something goes awry in the rehab because he's had various upper body, injuries over the courses of the years.
Quentin, if I'm the Los Angeles Dodgers, I want to see Shohei Ohtani pitch ... in October. And that really, I think, is the way that they're approaching this right now. I understand they open in Japan against the Chicago Cubs, and they're hoping to have him back in the lineup after shoulder surgery from that ill-fated dive into second base during the World Series. But getting him back on the mound, there's absolutely no rush at this point. This is a guy who has had 2 Tommy John surgeries within a 5-year span. That does not tend to portend well for the long-term health of his pitching arm. And so you're going to do everything you can, not to baby him necessarily, but to be judicious in the way that you approach it, because if you rush him back, it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze, man. The Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs. Catastrophic injuries could happen to this team, and they will still be a playoff team. But what you want for October is the best version of the team that you've got. And the best version of this team includes Shohei Ohtani on the mound. So there's no reason to get him back in April or May or hell, even June if you don't have to, because you want him there for the moments that count, for the moments that are going to get you gold. And that's October.
So, Doc, after hearing Jeff Passan, one of the biggest insiders in baseball, what was your reaction to that?
I couldn't agree more with the things that he said. This is a question of could he pitch by May or June versus should he pitch by May or June? And that's a very, very not so subtle difference, okay? Personally, I feel, we always say in baseball, what wins playoffs? It's pitching. You got to have the strongest pitching staff you can when the playoffs roll around in October. So if you guarantee that you're going to have this guy, and you can guarantee that he'll be able to pitch by October, if he's ever able to come back to pitch. Remember, we've had that discussion too. Nobody knows for sure that he's going to be able to return to his former pitching level. But let's say he can. By October, it's safe. Okay, enough. It's almost 2 years from the surgery, right? If the Dodgers can get to the playoffs without risking him injuring himself again, why take that chance? And the Dodgers are so strong this year, even with a couple of really big people going down, they're still likely going to make the playoffs. So you might as well keep all of your pieces on the chessboard and not risk, because let's say Ohtani goes back to pitch in June and he can't do it. He just isn't able to perform, or worse yet, he re-injures himself. He's done as far as pitching is concerned. And he might be done as far as hitting if they have to do something surgically for his elbow, right? So why not take the safe route? Keep him as a DH. Let him play in as many games as he can as a DH. The fantasy players who pick him up will love that, right? And then if he shows up in October, suddenly you're bringing in an arm that Major League Baseball doesn't have a book on him. Nobody's seen him. It's like a fresh face. It's like when Fernando Valenzuela first came to LA. The hitters were flummoxed with the way he looked up at the sky when he threw the ball, right? Batters didn't know what to do. They're going to be facing a Shohei Ohtani that nobody's seen for 2 years. There's no book on him now. So you're going to have this new weapon that nobody's prepared for and has been able to watch film on. And that's just a very, very formidable weapon. So I would say, if I was making the decisions, I'd say hold him out to the fall and let him pitch in the fall.
Dr. B, you're saying the Dodgers could have another advantage going into the World Series and going into the postseason, as if they needed another one?
Just what they need, right? The fans will be disappointed, especially that whole Japanese contingent that has more eyeballs on the Dodgers than America does.
And the Dodgers are opening the season in Japan, so they're going to be the most eager to see him.
But if he's batting .320 and parking it and stealing bases and doing everything else at the plate, people are going to be satisfied with that. And then imagine the absolute hysteria that will happen if he comes out and starts pitching in the playoffs. That's how I would play that hand. But I'm not a major league general manager.
Hey, we're all waiting for Coach Roberts or Skipper Dave Roberts to get extended. But if he doesn't, Dr. B, you might be able to put your name in the hat.
No, I'm the doctor in the dugout. I am not the manager in the dugout. Far too much stress. What I do is far easier for my stomach and my ulcers to handle.
Dr. B, thank you very much for joining us always on the Road to Recovery, presented by the Hoag Orthopedic Institute. I know, Doctor in the dugout, you're staying in the dugout for a little bit, right?
Little hiatus for the next few weeks because all the Angels spring training games are on Saturday at 12 noon, which is my broadcast hour. So I have to give it up for a couple of weeks, but we'll be back March 15th and very special March 22nd. We're going to be doing our broadcast live from the Hoag Classic at Newport Beach Country Club. So that'll be fun. Fans and listeners, just come on out and visit us. We're going to be taping a lot of the plays during the week, and we'll be broadcasting live on Saturday the 22nd from Newport Beach Country Club. Come on out and watch the Champions Tour. Those guys are a lot of fun to watch.
Doc, I can't believe it's that time of the year already. The Hoag Classic is back.
Okay.
Thanks, Doc, for joining us on the Road to Recovery, and thank you, and we'll see you next time.
試合が終わり、大谷翔平の姿がスタジアムの歓声の中にあった。彼の存在感、そして勝負強さは、今シーズンのドジャースにとって計り知れないものとなっている。手術からの復帰という困難を乗り越え、彼が打席に立つたびにファンの期待が高まる。今回のスプリングトレーニング初出場も、ただの1試合ではなく、大谷翔平が再び頂点を目指す旅の第一歩だ。試合前、多くの専門家が、手術後の初打席、慎重に見るべきだ、と予想していた。しかし、大谷はそんな不安を吹き飛ばすかのように、彼らしい堂々としたスイングを見せた。結果がどうであれ、その姿勢こそが彼の真骨頂だろう。試合後、チームメイトたちも彼のプレーを称賛し、彼がいることでチームの士気が一段と上がる、と口を揃えた。これは単なるリハビリの過程ではない。大谷翔平という存在が、チームの中心にいることを証明する瞬間なのだ。もちろん、彼の道のりはまだ始まったばかりだ。これからシーズンが進むにつれ、さらなる挑戦が待ち受けている。しかし、ファンとして、今この瞬間を楽しみ、彼の一打席一打席に心を躍らせることができるのは幸せなことだろう。MLB の誰もが彼の完全復活を待ち望んでいる中、彼自身がどのようなシナリオを描くのか、その一挙手一投足に注目が集まる。特に、彼の登板については様々な憶測が飛び交っている。開幕から投げるべきか、それともポストシーズンまで慎重に調整するべきか。専門家の間でも意見が分かれているが、ドジャースの戦力を考えれば、焦げる必要はない。むしろ、確実にシーズン終盤に万全の状態で戻ってくる方がチームにとっても大きなアドバンテージとなる。そう考えると、今の大家に求められているのは、打撃で圧倒的な存在感を放ちつつ、じっくりとリハビリを進めることだろう。今日の試合は、 そんな彼の新たなシーズンの幕開けだった。これからどんなドラマが待ち受けているのか、どんな記録が生まれるのか、期待せずにはいられない。一つ確かなことは、大谷翔平が打席に立つだけで、球場の雰囲気が変わり、ファンの熱狂が生まれるということだ。彼がいることで、ドジャースはより強く、より魅力的なチームになっていく。これからの戦いも、一瞬たりとも見逃せないシーズンが始まった。ファンの皆さんも、ぜひ一緒に彼のプレーを楽しみましょう。そして、今後の試合や最新情報を見逃さないように、ぜひチャンネル登録をお願いします。大谷翔平の挑戦はまだ続く。これからも彼と共に、野球の素晴らしさを共有していきましょう。